You're listening to News Bite Scotland with Michael McEwan and Peter Newman.
Welcome to the second edition of News Bite Scotland with me, Peter Newman, and with my colleague and the founder, Michael McEwan. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you, Michael?
Yeah, not bad. I'm quite happy now because it's beginning to get a bit late at night now, about 5:15 maybe.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's been pretty dreary, but it's nice to be past it now. For those who don't know, Michael is our Central Belt correspondent, a freelance journalist and a disability rights activist. I'm your Highland correspondent based up here in the frozen north. I'm a teacher, a freelance journalist, and a failed political candidate on a number of things. News Bite Scotland is your show which takes you through the key stories that have taken place in Scotland over the last month, and we look ahead to what's upcoming. And we've got an absolutely packed show today. This is going to be a tight 45, and Michael has been very tolerant because all day I've been messing around and having technical failures and various other things going wrong. So we're fingers crossed that this one broadcasts and goes exactly how we need it to. So first off, Michael, we were going to talk about the former Earl of Inverness. There's a nice little Highland reference for you. The artist formerly known as Prince Andrew and his arrest. So take it away, Michael. How do we feel about that?
I thought you were going to break into a song there, Peter, when you said the artist known as Prince. But yeah, I mean, it's really a kind of story. It's I would say maybe this story should have been out a few years ago, or even last year, to be honest with you, because everybody knew that there was something a bit kind of like fishy, if I can say that expression, going on. But it took them till last week to basically kind of like arrest him, and it's quite interesting how it's took them a long time. And a lot of people say that the royal family covered it up and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to get sued by the royal family, so I'll just say we don't know if that's true or not. But yes, the whole story seems a bit weird to me, Peter.
Yeah, I think it's, you've now, of course, set me off thinking of Prince-related puns. So we could have, this is what it sounds like when dukes cry, you were a raspberry prison beret or something. I think in terms of the cover-up aspect, I think it's interesting that there's been this is not a new story in the sense that he stopped being a trade envoy 15 years ago because of his association with Jeffrey Epstein. The royal family is alleged to have given money to people who had accused him. And of course, actually what he's been arrested for is misconduct in a public office, which is quite important from our sort of Scottish point of view, because of course it was this which then put the pressure on Keir Starmer's government because of the relationship with Peter Mandelson, which then led Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar to come out and call for Starmer's resignation in what I think he thought was going to be a night of the long knives, and turned out to be the afternoon of the broken pencil or something, didn't it? It wasn't quite the coup that he was hoping it was going to be. So what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, so as I was saying to you, that me and you had a wee chat about this bit before we were recording the podcast. So it was quite a quiet Monday afternoon. Nothing really was happening. I was eating my lunch, and then suddenly it came up on the news ticker tape. Breaking news: Anna Sarwar wants something about he wants the Prime Minister to step down or some words to that effect. And then he's holding a news conference within the hour. So as you could imagine, I kind of gulped down my lunch, and I went to watch it, and I thought it was quite interesting. I thought, okay, I wonder where this will go. And it never went anywhere. As well, apart from one or two of the Scottish Labour Party coming out to support Anna Sarwar, only because I think they were fearing for the job if they said, no, Anna, sit down, you're talking nonsense as well. But it was quite interesting how Keir Starmer had a meeting that night in Westminster, and apparently that you couldn't get into the room. It was full of Labour MPs, and they were cheering, and one or two of them said to the media when they come out that was the best speech Keir Starmer has ever done as Prime Minister or leader of the party. So it really leaves me about Anna Sowers basically ate a bit of humble pie and hit himself wet again. But I don't know where it goes from here. It puts him in an awkward position, Peter, when the Scottish elections are coming up in a few months' time. Is Keir Starmer going to campaign with him? Is he going to come up to Scotland at all? So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, it's interesting because, of course, Keir Starmer is alleged to have asked them not to come up because the brand is now so toxic that they don't want them campaigning in Scotland. And I think that's really what was behind it. I mean, there's no doubt Sarwar has been heavily linked to the kind of central Labour Party for a really long time. You know, he's known Mandelson for 20 years. He called him an old friend. He was on stage at the Labour Party conference under Starmer. He's been a big backer of Starmer. And I think what you saw, you know, a couple of weeks ago was him really trying to put clear red water between him and the Labour down south. Of course, what he's done inadvertently is give the independence movement every single possible line you could ask for in terms of, you know, he's literally said Westminster isn't working for Scotland. So now all the SNP have to do is come out and recycle Anas's own lines against him. So it was tactically it was a very strange move. I think there appears to be that he was sort of set up. I think it would appear that he was told that other cabinet members down south were going to come out after he went and called for Starmer to resign. But I suppose the other way of looking at it is if you read the opinion polls, Sarwar is goosed no matter what. So he needed to do something to try and switch up the conversation and try and move the Scottish Labour Party's brand on. Now, what seems to have happened off the back of that is the opinion polls have not supported that at all. So whilst nobody in Scotland or not nobody, a very small amount of people in Scotland are still saying they're going to vote Labour, this didn't work in essence, which is a shame for Sarwar. We were going to sort of move on to talk about this. There was a poll published yesterday. It's the first one of the MRP polls. So, these much more in-depth, widespread things. That's suggesting the SNP are going to get a majority. It's predicting the 67 seats, which is one of the first polls I've seen that actually does that. But kind of more relevant to this part of the conversation, it also predicts that Labour are going to be down as low as 15 seats. So Reform, they think, are going to be on 28, 29. And Labour will return their worst elections since the beginning of devolution.
Maybe just to add something there, Peter, as well, that we all know that if Westminster had it way, the Scottish Parliament would have been shut down yesterday or maybe like last year. But I think this kind of like in a roundabout way, you're right. I think it helps SNP in a kind of way because I think it will help the SNP, Peter, because I think in the roundabout way that because Anna Sowar has come out and made the statement and he's kind of cussed his pie himself in the roundabout way, I think that will help the kind of like independence kind of like cause.
You're listening to News Bite Scotland.
The next story is also about the independence movement, but possibly from depending on your point of view, potentially a less helpful thing. This was the what appears to be the folding of the Alba Party. So again, for those who don't know, the Alba Party was started in 2021 by Alex Salmon, and it was very much a place for people who were dissatisfied with the SNP's route to independence. Attracted a lot of members who thought that the SNP were going too slow, who was being too legalistic. And then in the wake of Salmon's death, It was taken over by Kenny McCaskill, the former Justice Secretary, who was obviously a lifelong political ally of Salmon's. So as of this weekend, they put out an announcement saying that they were unlikely to be able to field candidates. I don't know what it was like in the central belt, but up here, it sort of came out of nowhere. They were announcing a slate of candidates. We had sort of 2, 3, 4 people announced as they were going to, because they were only going to run on the regional list anyway. And then suddenly it was, oh, actually, we can't afford it, and we're done. So, yeah, was the same sort of thing down south?
Yeah. I would maybe say that this is the same. I would say maybe this is the same story as Anasawa. Basically, nobody saw it coming. It came out of nowhere. I think it was Monday it came out as well. A bit kind of like left field. I mean, I've got my own views on Alba, and I'm sure people watching this has, and I'm sure you have as well, Peter, as well. But I just feel as though that party was, now, in my opinion, I might get a bit of stick here for saying this. In my opinion, I think that whole party was set up to get back at Nicola Sturgeon. That's a personal opinion. And I don't know if you want to keep this bit in or out, but I just feel, I feel very kind of like strongly on the issue. And then when you hear Alba talking on TV, question time or debate night or whatever that the choice you want to see, they don't actually come up with a policy. It's independence and independence and independence and independence. They don't talk about poverty. They don't talk about education. They don't talk about the issues of the day. And I know, listen, I know that's SNP and the Greens kind of ultimate goal, as it were, but they have other things to campaign on and to kind of look at. So I just feel as though the party was kind of going nowhere. And when Alex Salmon passed away, and it was sad when they passed away, I just feel as though that the party lost that kind of like momentum in a way. And also because the Ash Reagan stepped down, what was that, a few months ago now or before Christmas?
Yeah, when she lost the leadership election,
Yeah, and then, so, yeah, that's a kind of left field kind of like story, but I'll be interested to see where these MPs actually go, if they actually join the SNP or the Green Party. I'm not sure about the SNP because the kind of like the relationship might have been flattered by the SNP there. So I don't know. It's one of these ones. What's the space?
I mean, I think you made a number of really interesting and points I basically agree with. I think the central driving issue around Alba was that it was driven by a bitterness. Like now you're saying it was driven against Nicola Sturgeon. I think there's definitely some truth in that. And it seemed to come down to that like personal lack of relationship between Salmon and Sturgeon by the end. And okay, people might well disagree with that, but that's certainly how it presented from the outside, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's okay, but the issue is exactly that once you then lost that figurehead of Salmon, who was this kind of political giant, love him or loathe him, like he was a huge figure, it did lose the momentum. Exactly what you're saying. It became very, very difficult for the thing. And the other thing is that there's then all of these kind of accusations being thrown around, but like the SNP have been very clear that the Supreme Court has said you can't have an independent majority at Holyrood is not enough to get another referendum. Now, loads of people think that we shouldn't have put that to the test and blah, blah, blah. But now you've got an answer, right? Mm-hmm. So you know that UK law, which is basically heavily influenced by English law, which is set on precedents, means that the only time that we've ever had an independence referendum before was when we had an SNP majority. Now, that is basically because politicians in Westminster don't understand the Scottish system and have no interest in doing so. Right now, the people in Alba gnashed their teeth, ironically, with a news bite, giant teeth behind us. Right, and they find that incredibly infuriating because it shouldn't be, and it should be done on Scottish law and blah blah. And I understand that, but that ain't the world you're living in. You know, at the moment, we exist in a system which is controlled by UK law primarily, and therefore we have to play the game, and we're going to have to beat them at their own game. Yeah. What that poll that we just referenced before suggests is that we actually are on course to do that. And I think this is the point at which those very angry Alba activists, if they are genuinely pro-independence, need to come back in. They need to hold their nose. They need to vote SNP 1 and 2, and then get the referendum, and then we can have all the other bun fights and all the other things. You know, let's get the independence. Let's get the referendum using the English system. That's the one that they understand and which there is precedence for. Because then, if Starmer then turns down an independence referendum, then he's got a huge problem. And that, of course, also leaves out, it looks very, very likely that on May the 8th, there's going to be a pro-independence majority in Scotland, a pro-independence majority in Wales, and a Sinn Féin government in Northern Ireland. And so suddenly England is ringed with 3 countries that no longer want to be part of this partnership of equals, right? So, you know, it becomes very difficult to turn that down. So I agree with you. I think that the Alba thing is the other bit, of course, is that Kenny McCaskill is saying that it looks like there's been a fraud perpetrated on the party, that the reason they can't run the candidates is because there's fraud. So presumably that now goes under police investigation.
Well, we heard that one before.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, here we go. So it's interesting, isn't it, that it's always the finances that seem to create havoc.
Just to ask you as well, right? So if they don't go to the SNP or go to the Greens, I presume that they'll go to the Green Party. But where else would they go, Peter?
Well, believe it or not, there is a big chunk of them going to Reform.
Right.
I got attacked on Facebook for pointing this out in the comments, but I know it because I'm campaigning and I'm chapping on thousands of doors. And in fact, it's a minority, but it's a sizable minority of Alba candidates who are anti-union, full stop. So they don't want a United Kingdom. They don't want to rejoin Europe. All unions are bad. Which it's not my opinion, but at least it has a kind of intellectual coherence to it. I can see why that makes sense. And so they were very angry with Sturgeon with this kind of legalistic point of view. And so they're in a kind of smash the system version of independence. And so there is a chunk that are going to Reform. Some are coming back to the SNP. There are the ones who were disillusioned. They are, you know, the implication, of course, was always that they were supposed to vote SNP in the constituency candidates anyway, because the Alba weren't going to have a candidate in that. I think some of them just won't vote. So I think you'll have I think you're right. Some will go Green, although possibly less than you think, because the Greens tend to drive social issues that the Alba voters aren't quite as interested in.
Would some of them go independent, pagging the point, but, you know, standards are independent?
Well, yeah, and I think that's the other. So there's I can't remember, is it the Solidarity Party or the Independent Solidarity Party?
Yeah, Tommy Sheridan, is that right?
Yeah, although I thought he'd come into, I think he'd actually joined Alba, hadn't he? But
he went up, yeah.
Yeah, but you're right, before then. So the ISP, Colette Walker and all those guys. And I think that some of the voters will go there as well. So basically, you're talking about at best 3% of the electorate, and I think it's going to fragment. So I think of that 3%, you know, some are going to go here. So it's going to be a block. The polling would tell you, I believe, that if for the SNP, if Alba don't run a constituency candidate, it gives you about 1% more, roughly. So, yeah, I mean, they weren't even, I mean, one of the things is in some ways it might have done them a favor because they weren't really registering. They weren't on course to win any seats anyway. They weren't even going to get over the 5% threshold to get somebody on the list. So in most of the polling I've seen, I mean, I might be wrong, but yeah, so it's certainly going to move things on. But
you're listening to News Bite Scotland with Michael McEwan and Peter Newman.
it leaves us on to another conversation about a figure who was pretty huge in the independence movement, which is Gene Freeman.
Yeah, it was very sad news, passing away at 72, and apparently it was a very, very short illness. I think she was only diagnosed with cancer about 3 or 4 weeks before she actually passed away, and that's sad in itself. I mean, what I said on social media was, Peter, forget about politics if you like the SNP or figures that it's good up at the COVID press conference. Forget about that, because if you go underneath the surface, right? I think she was married, so basically,
yeah.
yeah. So like she's lost her wife, and she's lost a big loss to her family as well, and then the SNP kind of family. So in a way, that's kind of two different families, if that makes sense. Like an actual family, as in go to night sight with, and social occasions and all that. And then the SNP family, where she goes to Scottish Parliament and she goes to cabinet meetings and all that. I mean, she was a big part of my life in a way, because obviously during COVID, during lockdown, I think it was like 12:30 of the day, you turned it on and there was Nicola Sturgeon and Jane Freeman doing the media, and also some days Jean was there on a Sunday doing it on behalf of Nicola Sturgeon. So I mean, it's the yeah, quite sad. I'm just reading here. Yeah, so it's like sad, terminal cancer, less than 4 weeks. So that's hardly anything, Peter. And but I was sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sad, isn't it? Because as you say, she was a big figure, really, and I mean, she had such an interesting life. She was born in Ayr, in Newton in Ayrshire, and she went to the Glasgow College of Technology, doing sociology and politics. She was a member of the Communist Party student wing, the first woman to lead the National Union of Students in Scotland. She was married at first to a guy called Dougie Hurd. And actually, that was about somebody who, so she was a disability rights campaigner as well in the 70s. And then from 1999, she was in a relationship with Susan Stewart. And, they actually got married in 2007. So, she was a special advisor to Scottish Labour. She eventually moved across to the SNP. So she's somebody who's actually been, she was somebody who went on a huge political journey herself. And as you say, was a kind of really recognizable face to everybody because of those COVID briefings. And she was a cool head at a difficult time. I mean, one of the things that I say when you kind of debate the things, one of the issues around the UK, and I use that carefully, is that Boris Johnson was, if anything, the worst prime minister for that particular crisis. You could have given him, I would have taken almost any other prime minister in the history of the United Kingdom than Boris Johnson at a time where it was something that was fast moving, scientific, needed attention to detail. You would have taken, you disagree with their politics all you like, but Thatcher, Brown, Blair, any of the Cameron, all of them, Theresa May especially, actually, they would have worked incredibly hard. They'd have gone into it and they'd have done their best. And you just knew with Johnson that it was a complete shambles. What we had with Sturgeon was exactly that. And Jean Freeman was such an able supporter, wasn't she, for that? And she was so clear, and she did her best, and she listened and she tried. And they didn't get all the decisions right. I don't think anybody would claim that they did. But even that group, there's the campaign group, Care Home Relative Scotland, who were, they want an investigation into the number of deaths in care homes, people who's discharged back into thing. Even they said when she died, that they felt that they had many meetings with her and that she always felt that she listened. And I think that's actually quite a from a group who were very unhappy with some of the decisions that were carried out, to get that level of praise, I think, is actually a huge testament to her, really.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I mean, but so Cabinet Secretary for Health and Sport, it's a big kind of case, and also on top of that, you had like COVID-19, where, as I said, they addressed the media kind of like 7 days a week, whereas not to get on my political high horse here, but Boris Johnson didn't really do it 7 days a week as well. So but I mean, it says a lot for Jane Fleegman to do that, and also as well that you've got to think how is her mental state telling the nation about, oh no, you can't go there, you can't go there, you've got to wear a mask, you've got to wear gloves, you've got to stand outside your shop as well, and people was giving a stick online at the time, and I don't really understand that because it's her job, but as I say, behind all that is a person, and she's got to cope with all her kind of like decisions. I mean, me and you, we don't get it right every time, right? Because no one's experts, right? But yeah, Jane, first and foremost, as a person as well, the goods happen to be in that role at that that kind of like particular time, you know.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right about the, you can't get it right all the time. And yeah, I don't think anybody's saying she did, but she did it with compassion. She did it with dedication, didn't she? And she'll be a huge loss to the Scottish political scene. And the fact that, as you say, she got less than 4 weeks from diagnosis to death is just horrible.
Yeah, it's not nice.
It's not. So,
you're listening to News Bites Scotland with Michael McEwan and Peter Newman.
We move on, though, to the events section. I'm just very conscious of the time. So we're actually over halfway. This News Bites Scotland does zip along, eating through the programme, young Michael.
Yes, well done.
You like that?
Yes.
So we were looking at upcoming events. You had highlighted to me the Glasgow International Comedy Festival.
Yeah, well, I like to see that you put this show together nicely, Peter. When you said we ate along the news stories, and then you went to the comedy festival, so that was like clever. That was good. But yeah, so this time of year, I think we spoke on the last podcast about the Celtic Connections coming to Glasgow, and then starting today, as we record, the Glasgow Film Festival to highlight different films in Scotland or around the world and all that. And then also in March, we've got the Glasgow Comedy Festival between the 11th to the 29th of March. And I was about to tell you about Mary Black's stand-up show. But however, since I spoke to you between yesterday and today, it's now sold out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I suppose that's a good thing. So Mary Black, the Different Sound of album, it's called. It's on at the Citizen Theatre, where she's going to talk about her career being a politician, but also I don't know if you know this, Peter, but she's just been diagnosed with ADHD. So that's going to be quite interesting to hear her take on that, and bring a bit of comedy to a kind of not a kind of taboo subject because, as you know, as being a teacher, it's highlighted now in schools and education and all that. But to see somebody speaking about that ADHD in the public in a public face and knocking down the barriers, as it were, to that. And also, there's other events on at the Glasgow Comedy Festival about political, if you're in that persuasion. So if you want to go to the website at glasgowcomedyfestival.com, that is the glasgowcomedyfestival.com, and you'll see what's on, where, what day, what time, etc.
Yeah, it's a good lineup as well, isn't it? I love Mary Black. It's interesting, actually. We study in school. So one of the listening assessments is Mary Black's maiden speech, and it's phenomenal. You know, it is. She's just turned 20 when she gives it, and it's funny, and it's fluent, and it's passionate, and it's just absolutely spot on, really. I did see an interview with her where she said that she had become a stand-up comedian because she just wanted to find another job in which she could chat rubbish and do day drinking, which I thought was, you know, a pretty good description of both stand-up comedy and politics, really. But I mean, I'm a huge stand-up fan. I am, in fact, a massive geek about stand-up, and the lineup looks fantastic to me. There's some really, really good acts. I'm just sad that I live so far away, really. I mean, we're talking about politics. I mean, they've got Daniel Sloss, who I think is very funny, but they've also got Rosie O'Donnell, who recently came under fire from Donald Trump. So, you know, that's probably a good recommendation for her. So, yeah, no, but if anybody wants to get along, I would highly recommend it. There are some absolutely top-notch Scottish comedians. Conor Burns is there as well. And I'll just give a special shout out for the Islanders. Mary Elaine Robertson, who I don't know if you've come across, but Mary Elaine is from Shetland and has got the broadest Shetland accent you can possibly imagine. And she's fabulous, really, really good. She actually came when I worked in Ardnamurchan, which for listeners who don't know is actually you go to Fort William and you take a wee ferry and you go across the peninsula around there. She actually came as part of an event where she was doing like tours of schools, and she did stand up for the kids and taught them how to write jokes and how you did it and everything. And she was fabulous, because that's not an easy thing to confront yourself with a room full of bored teenagers and be like, I'm really funny. You know, it can often go spectacularally badly.
I always feel comedy helps your confidence as well, Peter.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think stand-up comedy, and I mean, it actually comes back to what you were saying about the ADHD and everything. I think if you can channel that energy into being funny, then the world is your oyster, and it absolutely does build your confidence, and it's all of those kind of public speaking. But it's also a good opportunity for kids who are quite introverted to do written jokes. So you can find really different ways of getting into it. I love teaching stand-up comedy and comedy in general. And of course, there's something for everybody. But what is quite difficult is getting stuff that's actually age appropriate, because that's slightly more difficult.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the Glasgow Comedy Festival. I would hugely urge you to enjoy that and get along to it.
You're listening to News Bite Scotland with Michael McEwan and Peter Newman.
But we're moving on to the sports sections. We're in the last 11 minutes, Michael. It's been quite the month of sports, hasn't it?
Yeah. 1 minute I'm watching the Winter Olympics, and then the next minute I'm watching the Six Nations. It's been brilliant. But I mean, it's dark. When we done the first pod, we thought, okay, against Italy, but Italy beat us last year, so we weren't too confident, but we were quietly confident as jocks, as they say. But it never went to plan, because it was what you say in Scotland, it was a soaking day in Italy.
Yep. And we didn't respond at all, did we?
Yeah.
We let everything go wrong from the first minute to the end. And although we did kind of rally in the second half, it was very, very poor. And it was drukit. And it was just dreadful. It was a pretty low point. Because, of course, ironically, if you would pick a team that you think would cope in soaking wet weather, you would think Scotland.
Yeah.
But we are that was a horror show. However, I did say I said to you in that first show that we'd be happy if we stuffed England, and guess what?
We did. Yeah. Why do we always keep it for the old enemy? But yeah, it was brilliant to win against England. I mean, look, let's be honest with you, Peter. I would be quite happy to be England at hide and seek.
Yeah.
But
only because the English media would have been telling you that they were the world champions of hide and seek and that they invented it and that it was the only all of that. And that's really what it's about. I think it was that was a good. I enjoyed that game. I mean, that was an absolute command and control performance, wasn't it? I mean, England did not look anything like at the races at any point, and it was I think at one stage they came back to like 23-13 or something. You thought, 19-13. You're like, okay, it's just starting, because of course last year they beat us down at Twickenham by kind of just reeling us back in. But then George Ford had the slow motion drop goal charge down, and suddenly, Magnus Davidson, good Highland boy by the way, Oban, has streaked away, and then Hugh Jones, who is one of my all-time favourite Welsh players, scores under the sticks, and suddenly we're just pulling away from them. And it's a very interesting. It was a great example actually of how in rugby, when the momentum goes against you, and on such small things as a charge down drop goal does momentum shift. Actually, it then you think, because football's not quite like that. It's less dependent on the single moment. I think in football, it's the momentum. There obviously is momentum and stuff, but you have more opportunities to create momentum in football. In rugby, when it really starts to flow against you, and then you're suddenly out of position, and then the referee starts giving away penalties, and then and it's a horrible game to play when you're on the receiving end of it. It really is. You're just going backwards and backwards and backwards. And of course, one of the really cruel things in rugby is when you get scored against, you kick off to the opponents. So you then give them the ball back and say, "On you come again," and it can just feel like a very, very long afternoon. Which was great to watch from our point of view.
I mean, I have been talking to a lot of people, right? And because they say that why can't rugby? How can football not be like rugby? Because obviously, they could be fighting rugby, and the refs stand back and say, "On you go, guys." But in football, they jump about because they dive about because it's like, "Oh, I broke my fingernail, I need to go to the hospital." Rugby's a kind of man's game and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it, especially the game against England, obviously, but the Wales game as well, because I think like that game for me, I don't know about you, but that was like how we've got a saying on football, and I don't know if it's a same saying on rugby, but we say it was a game of two halves.
Yeah.
Well, I think that game against Wales was a game of two halves as well, because Scotland were out of it. But as you know, Peter, in football, it's the same. You make subs, they change the game. Townsend changed at half time, and I think you're saying it's got him a bit out of jail, because like you were saying in the first one, that it could be under a bit of pressure going into this season's nations.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's funny. I've just said about the momentum thing, and then you're quite right. The Wales game immediately actually contradicts that, because actually what happens is the momentum flowed against us for a whole half, and then Townsend emptied his bench, made some important changes, and it allowed us to shift it back against Wales and get over the line, but only just. Again, I would argue that the Finn Russell's kickoff, where Darcy Graham was able to collect it and score, it is the bit where the momentum suddenly, you saw Wales just deflate. But no, you're right. I mean, I think this is the Townsend thing is a really good example of act in haste, repent at leisure. And so, yeah, lots of people are, has he taken Scotland as far as they can go? And maybe, but you need to be 100% sure that who you're bringing in to replace Townsend is going to be better. And I'm not certain that there is the same depth of coaching that will be able to genuinely kind of do better than Townsend could do. I would like to see us with a full run of players without massive injuries. Remember, loads of these guys are completely emptied out, and this actually goes across the whole of the Six Nations, where players are, just because of the Lions, have been playing almost continuously for a year. And so some of these guys are just, like I said, are just emptied out, really. And that has helped Italy, because Italy don't take part in the Lions. So that's worth bearing in mind. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind is, of course, we've got 2 incredibly tough games left. So we've got Ireland up next, and then we've got France. No, we don't. Other way around. We've got France. Yeah. And that, you know, that's, well, what a way to end. Just the 2 teams have been absolutely tearing up. Well, certainly France have just looked amazing. So I don't know if you'll be watching. We've got a week off this week, don't we? And then it's the 7th for the France game, and then the 14th for March. Yeah. But you also referenced the Winter Olympics. You've been watching.
Yeah, no, that was quite good, and it got people watching sports in the Olympics that they don't watch every week, like curling and sports like that. And I watched a few sports that I've never saw in my life before, and I thought, oh, this is very interesting.
It's been quite good. And of course, I suppose the big headline from a Scottish point of view was the Team GB curlers, who won the silver medal. They lost to Canada in the final, but it was pretty tight. They lost 9-6. And I believe a bunch of them are Scottish. We've got kind of a heritage of curling, really, don't we? I'm not going to lie. The Winter Olympics is not a sporting event I watch very often, to be honest. But I did tune into curling to watch Sweeping with Style, which is how I see it. Anyway, as we come to the... Oh, go on.
By the way, just to say that the Olympics is finished, but also you've got the Winter Paralympics. They start, was it next week? It's the 6th of March to the 15th of March, and all the games will be live on Channel 4. So that'll be quite exciting. Yeah.
Brilliant. Do you know, it's funny you should mention the Paralympics, because it just to link back to my teaching role. I teach as well as comedy. I also do a unit about advertising, and one of the advertisement campaigns that I use with the kids is the Channel 4's Paralympics thing. You know, the
superhumans.
Meet the superheroes. It's absolutely fantastic. It's one of my all-time favorite advertising campaigns, and of course they've updated and changed over the years. But I didn't know there was a Winter Paralympics, so I will just the thing. So we are coming to the end. The time is rapidly marching away. You can see on the bottom ticker youtube.com/@newsbitescotland. That is youtube.com/@newsbitescotland. I would heartily recommend that you all go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you don't want to see our particularly pleasant faces, you can always find us on any of your podcaster apps. We're on Acast, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter @NewsBitesScott. That's @NewsBitesScott. Although, as Michael rightly pointed out, we haven't actually been updating that yet, but we will do, won't we, Michael? We will do.
Yes, no, we will. Yes, I will get my finger somewhere and do it.
Yeah, a little bit like that. You can find Michael, who's at Mikey Boy, MIKIE Boy 83 on Twitter, and you can follow me at PAJN Newman, PAJ Newman. That's my Twitter handle, I believe, and also on Instagram and stuff. And I will make one of those for Newsbite Scotland too. But thank you so much for joining us for the 2nd edition of Newsbite Scotland. We will be back to take you through all of the headlines from March and previewing the stuff coming up in April. Thank you, Michael, for your time.
Thank you, Peter. I will speak in about 4 weeks.
I think so. That's it. We'll be frantically running through all the news. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, now we're full because we've had our bite. That's News Bite Scotland for this month. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.
You're listening to News Bite Scotland with Michael McEwan and Peter Newman.